Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into the world of wine branding today.
Ooh, sounds intriguing.
I figured you'd like this one. We'll be looking at David Vogel's LinkedIn article, Wine Branding Mastery: Secrets to Explosive Sales.
That's a pretty bold title.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what secrets he's got.
Yeah, me too. He just published it like yesterday, October 24th, 2024. So we're right on top of
Got
it.
brush off the press.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we've got some really cool case studies to unpack, like the Prisoner Wine Company.
I've heard of them. They've got that striking label.
Yeah, exactly. And Whispering Angel Rosé, too.
Oh, yeah, everyone's talking about that one. It's everywhere.
And we're even going to get into the psychology of wine pricing, which I'm kind of fascinated by.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole world there. Like, why do we automatically think that a more expensive wine is better?
Right. There's so much more to it than just slapping a price tag on a bottle.
Absolutely.
Well, one thing that Vogel makes super clear is that wine branding is about way more than just a fancy label.
Yeah, it's got to
Right.
be more than that.
He talks about how it's really about creating a feeling, like an experience, a whole story around the wine.
Makes sense. You're not just buying the liquid. You're buying into a certain idea or image.
Yeah. And he even quotes this stat from Wine Intelligence in 2023. Apparently, 70% of consumers say a wine's brand affects their buying decisions.
Wow, that's a huge number.
It is. And it shows you the power of branding.
It's like people are buying wine for how it makes them feel, not just for the taste.
Totally. So, like, are they looking for sophistication, adventure? Are they trying to impress someone? The brand plays into all of that.
Definitely sets the stage.
Okay, so speaking of brands that totally nailed it, let's talk about the Prisoner Wine Company.
Okay, yeah, let's dive into that one.
They really shook things up. Like, they came out of nowhere and flipped the script on how wine was supposed to be branded.
So what did they do differently?
Well, one of the big things was how they deliberately moved away from all that, I don't know, like elitist imagery that you usually see with wine.
Yeah, all that fancy calligraphy and chateau pictures.
Right. Instead, they went for something bold, almost edgy, with their label and their whole message. They even called it The Prisoner, which is kind of out there.
That's a pretty powerful image. It makes
Yeah.
you wonder about the story behind it.
Yeah. And they were clearly targeting a younger audience like millennials and Gen Z who aren't really into all that traditional stuffy wine stuff.
Smart move. Gotta go where the market is.
And their strategy totally worked. Before they got acquired by Constellation Brands back in 2016, they were seeing a 20% annual revenue growth.
That's impressive.
And they were pulling in like $100 million in sales every single year.
Now that's what I call explosive sales.
Yeah.
Just like the title of the article said.
Right. It just goes to show you don't need some centuries-old family vineyard to make it big. A good story and a strong brand can be just as powerful.
Sometimes even more so.
And this is a great lesson for anyone in the hospitality industry, too.
Oh, how so?
Well, your wine selection should tell a story, just like any other part of your brand. Like if you're running a super fancy restaurant, your wine list should reflect that.
Right, you'd want to have those high-end bottles, maybe some rare vintages.
Exactly. But if you're more of a casual, laid-back kind of place, your wines should have that same vibe.
It's all about consistency and creating a cohesive experience for your guests.
Totally. Okay, let's shift gears for a second and talk about pricing.
Okay, pricing. Always a sensitive topic.
Right. There's this idea that the cheaper your wine is, the more you'll sell. But is that always true?
Not necessarily. Sometimes it's like reverse psychology almost.
What do you mean?
Well, like we automatically tend to think that a more expensive wine is probably better quality.
It's like that saying, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, and that's the halo effect in action. It means that positive impressions in one area, like price, can kind of spill over into another, like quality.
So a higher price tag can actually make people think the wine tastes better, even if it doesn't.
It's about perceived value more than anything else.
I guess it's like with, say, designer clothes or fancy cars. The price is part of what makes them so desirable.
Exactly. And there's actually research to back this up when it comes to wine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was this study by the American Association of Wine Economists back in 2022.
Okay.
And they found that wines priced between like $45 and $70 sold way faster than wines in the $25 to $35 range. It was a 45% difference.
That's huge.
It is. And Wine Spectator even found that wines over $100 are seen as luxury items, almost like a status symbol.
So there's this sweet spot where you can price your wine to not only cover costs, but actually increase sales just by playing into consumer psychology.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting challenge, especially for anyone in the hospitality industry. Like, how do you price your wine to create that luxury feel without scaring people off?
That's a great question. And it makes me think of our next case study, Whispering Angel. They really nailed that premium pricing strategy.
Yeah, they did. They dared to be different.
Okay, so most rosés were priced at like under $15 a bottle, right?
But pretty standard.
But Whispering Angel comes along and they decide to charge like $22.
Oh,
It was, but it totally paid off. They managed to make rosé, which was always seen as kind of a casual, cheaper choice, into something aspirational, like a luxury item.
it's almost like they reinvented rosé.
And they even attracted people who didn't even really like rosé before. The higher price tag somehow made it more appealing.
It's that halo effect again.
It really is. By 2021, Whispering Angel became the top-selling rosé in the entire U.S., and they were making $200 million a year.
That's incredible. They managed to charge more and sell more.
It makes you wonder if we're all just drawn to things that seem more exclusive, even if it's just because they cost more.
There's definitely an element of that. But in Whispering Angel's case, they also created a whole story and image around their brand. It wasn't just about the price.
It was like they elevated the whole experience of drinking rosé.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to a trend that's really shaking things up in the wine world right now, non-alcoholic wine.
Oh, yeah. That's everywhere these days.
It seems like everyone's got a non-alcoholic option now.
And for good reason. The market is booming.
It really is. Mordor Intelligence, which is a market research firm, predicts that the global non-alcoholic wine market will reach $1.4 billion by 2026.
Wow.
With a 7.6% compound annual growth rate. So that's a huge jump.
That's a lot of people choosing not to drink.
Right. And it's not just people who don't drink alcohol at all.
There's a whole new generation of consumers who are more health conscious.
Yeah. Millennials and Gen Z, they want to enjoy the experience of wine, but without the alcohol content. It's all about a healthier lifestyle.
Makes sense. It's about having options.
Exactly. And this is a huge opportunity for businesses in the hospitality industry. Like, if you can cater to this growing market, you're opening yourself up to a whole new customer base.
Absolutely. You gotta stay ahead of the curve.
And one brand that's doing this really well is Thompson & Scott's Naughty alcohol-free sparkling Chardonnay.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that one at the store. It's a pretty bottle.
Yeah, and they've positioned themselves as a premium option, which is interesting. Like, they're not afraid to charge a higher price.
Even though there's no alcohol.
Yeah. Their bottles go for like $21.99, which is more than a lot of other non-alcoholic wines.
And I bet that pricing strategy is part of their success. It reinforces that perception of quality,
Yeah.
Even though it's non-alcoholic.
Right. And they're really smart about their marketing, too. They emphasize all the health benefits, like their wines are vegan, low in sugar, no artificial additives.
They're appealing to that health-conscious consumer.
Exactly. And it's clearly working because they've expanded into 30 countries, and they're seeing a 35% growth year over year since 2019.
That's impressive growth. They've really tapped into something.
They have. Okay, so we've seen brands that are disrupting the market. We've seen brands that are innovating. But now I want to talk about a brand that embodies that idea of long-term brand building and exclusivity.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Which brand are we talking about?
Opus One.
Ah, yes, Opus One. The name itself just sounds luxurious.
Right. It was founded back in 1979 by Robert Mondavi and Baron Philippe de Rothschild, and they set out from the very beginning to create a world-class wine.
With a legacy behind it.
Exactly. And they achieved that through this very deliberate strategy of scarcity and exclusivity.
So how did they do that?
Well, they intentionally limit their production to around 25,000 cases a year.
Wow, that's not a lot.
It's not. And that scarcity drives up demand, which allows them to justify their premium prices.
And we're talking about some serious prices, right?
Yeah, in 2022, a bottle of Opus One could cost you anywhere from $300 to $1,200, depending on the vintage. And rare vintages can go for even more on the secondary market.
It's like a collector's item.
It really is. They've turned their wine into an investment, almost.
And they've got that direct-to-consumer approach too, right?
Yeah, they have exclusive memberships, private tastings, and their social media is very, very carefully curated. They don't chase trends or anything like that.
It's like they're saying, we don't need to shout about how great we are. People already know.
Exactly. It's all about understated elegance and letting the quality speak for itself. And clearly, it's working. In 2021, they reported $96 million in sales.
Wow, that's mostly coming from people looking for that ultimate luxury experience.
It's a masterclass in how to build a long-lasting brand.
It really is. And it shows that there are many paths to success in the wine world. You could be a disruptor, an innovator, or a legacy brand. But there are some fundamental principles that always apply.
Like what?
Well, based on what we've seen so far, I'd say understanding your target audience is key, right? And then strategic pricing is crucial. It's not just about numbers, it's about psychology.
Right, and you need a compelling story, something that resonates with people and makes them want to buy into your brand.
A story that goes beyond the bottle itself.
It's almost like we've uncovered the secret recipe for success, but instead of flour and sugar, we're using storytelling, psychology, and a sprinkle of exclusivity.
I like that analogy.
Okay, so David Vogel uses this interesting phrase in his article. He talks about the monkey see, monkey do principle.
Oh, that's interesting. What do you think he means by that?
I think he's suggesting that we can learn a lot by looking at what successful brands are already doing and then adapting those strategies to our own situation.
Yeah, like taking inspiration from the best and making it your own.
Exactly. It's not about copying. It's about understanding the principles behind their success and then figuring out how to apply those principles to your own brand.
Like learning from a master chef. You might use their recipe as a starting point, but you add your own personal touch.
I love that analogy. So it's about understanding those underlying principles and then getting creative with how we apply them.
Exactly. And one strategy that we've seen used effectively by a lot of brands is influencer marketing.
True, like 14 Hands Winery and their Instagram-worthy events. But how does that actually translate into sales? Like, how does it work?
Well, think about it. Influencers have already built up a following, right? They've got people who trust their recommendations.
So it's like getting a suggestion from a friend, but that friend has thousands of followers.
Exactly. And when they recommend your wine, it feels more authentic and organic than a traditional ad.
So you're tapping into that existing network and reaching a whole new audience.
And research has shown that influencer marketing can actually be way more effective than traditional advertising, like 11 times the return on investment, according to Claire.
Wow, 11 times. That's amazing.
It is. And it's definitely something worth exploring further. We should talk more about how to use influencer marketing effectively.
Absolutely. This is getting really interesting. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this topic.
Me too. And there's still so much to unpack in Vogel's article.
So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, what's the biggest thing that's standing out to you so far?
Honestly, it's got to be that halo effect and how a higher price tag can actually make us think a wine is better, even if it's not.
It's wild how much psychology plays into our decisions, even with something as simple as buying a bottle of wine.
It just shows how important it is for brands to understand these psychological triggers and use them effectively. It's like marketing magic, almost.
I can't wait to dive deeper into this and uncover even more insights from Vogel's article in the next part of our deep dive.
Me too. There's a whole lot more to learn about the art and science of wine branding.
So we were just talking about that monkey see, monkey do concept, remember?
Oh, yeah, about learning from the brands that are already killing it.
Yeah, it's like we get to peek into their playbooks and see what's working for them.
To steal all their best secrets.
Well, not steal, more like get inspired, you know?
Borrow and adapt.
Exactly. So let's break down those 5 key marketing techniques from the article.
Okay, sure.
You mentioned storytelling through branding. It sounds like it's all about building a whole narrative around your wine.
It is. It's like giving your wine a personality.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Like, is it sophisticated and elegant, bold and adventurous, fun and playful?
So it's got to have like a vibe.
Yeah, and that story, that vibe, it becomes the heart of your brand. And it needs to connect with the people you're trying to reach, your target audience.
Makes sense. So it's not just about the wine itself, it's about the image and the emotions you're trying to evoke.
Yeah, exactly. Like, are you transporting someone to a Tuscan vineyard with every sip?
Or are you taking them to like a California beach party?
It's all about creating that experience in their mind.
Okay, so you've got your story, your vibe, then you weave it into every single part of your branding.
Yeah, from the label design to your marketing materials to what you post on social media, consistency is key.
Makes sense. Now, premium pricing. This one still kind of blows my mind. Like, we always think that lower prices equal more sales, right?
Yeah, that's the natural instinct.
But it sounds like that's not always the case with wine.
Not always. Sometimes it's almost like reverse psychology.
What do you mean?
Well, like we said before, people associate a higher price with better quality.
Yeah, the halo effect.
They think if it costs more, it must be better, even if that's not actually true.
So instead of just covering your costs, pricing becomes a way to position your wine in the market, make it seem more desirable.
Exactly. Perceived value is everything. Think about like luxury cars or designer handbags. The price is part of what makes them so aspirational.
Yeah, it's like a status symbol almost.
And we saw how well that worked with Whispering Angel and Opus One. They weren't afraid to charge a premium, and it paid off big time.
It's interesting to think about, okay, influencer marketing was another one you mentioned. I remember 14 Hands Winery and their Instagram-worthy events, but how does that actually lead to sales? Like, what's the mechanism there?
Well, influencers have built a following, right? People trust their recommendations.
Yeah, it's like a trusted friend telling you about a great new wine they discovered.
Exactly. It feels way more authentic than some random ad.
So you're leveraging their existing network to reach a whole new audience.
And it can be super effective. Research shows that influencer marketing can generate like 11 times the return on investment compared to traditional advertising.
Whoa, 11 times. That's huge.
It is. Definitely something worth exploring.
Okay, what about health-conscious options? That seems like a whole different ballgame.
It is. The rise of non-alcoholic beverages is a huge trend, and smart wine brands are paying attention.
Yeah, like it's not just about catering to people who don't drink alcohol.
It's about recognizing that people are making healthier choices, and they still want to enjoy a glass of wine, without the alcohol.
Yeah, and Naughty is a great example of a brand that's nailed that, right? They've positioned themselves as a premium non-alcoholic option.
And their pricing reflects that. They're not afraid to charge more, which actually reinforces the idea that you're not missing out on anything by choosing non-alcoholic.
Right, it's not like some cheap alternative. It's its own thing, and it's just as good, if not better.
And they do a great job of highlighting those health benefits. Vegan, low sugar, no artificial stuff.
Yeah, they're speaking directly to their target audience.
Smart marketing.
Okay, last one. Exclusive guest experiences. What does that even look like in the world of wine?
Well, think private tastings, personalized bottles, exclusive events, maybe even a membership program. It's about making your customers feel special, like they're part of something exclusive.
So you're building a community, a sense of belonging.
Yeah, and creating memories that go beyond just buying a bottle of wine. Like Opus One, they've created that whole aura of exclusivity.
Yeah, you feel like you're in the know, like you've got access to something that most people don't.
And experiences are often more memorable than just a product,
Yeah.
They stick with you.
We've covered a lot of ground here, but I feel like there's one more essential ingredient we need to talk about: authenticity.
Ah, yes. The secret sauce.
Because if your brand isn't authentic, people can see right through it, right?
Absolutely. Especially nowadays. People can smell a fake a mile away.
So how does a brand ensure that they're coming across as authentic? It seems kind of hard to define.
Well, I think it starts with passion. Like, do the people behind the brand genuinely love what they do? Does it show?
It's like that saying, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Exactly. And that why needs to be real, relatable. It could be a family tradition, a commitment to sustainability, or just a deep, deep love for wine.
So it's not just about crafting a fancy story, it's about being true to who you are as a brand.
And letting that shine through. And transparency plays a big role, too. People want to know what they're buying into.
So how can a wine brand be more transparent? Any examples?
Well, they can be open about where they source their grapes, how they make their wine, even how they set their prices. Show the real people behind the brand, the winemakers, the vineyard workers. Put a face to the name.
I like that. You're humanizing the brand, showing that there are real people with passion and expertise behind it.
Yeah, it's not just some faceless corporation. And when you do that, you're building a community.
Turning customers into fans, even advocates for your brand.
Exactly. Authenticity breeds loyalty.
This has been so insightful. We've explored so many strategies for building a successful wine brand, but for me, it always comes back to finding your unique story, your unique perspective.
Yeah, your brand's got to have a soul.
So, what advice would you give to a wine brand that's still trying to figure out their story?
I'd say ask yourself the tough questions. Why did you start this brand? What gets you fired up? What do you want your wine to represent?
It's like going on a self-discovery journey for your brand.
Exactly. And once you have that clarity, that purpose, you can start to craft a story that feels authentic.
And don't be afraid to be different. The best brands are the ones that break the mold.
Stand out from the crowd. Embrace your individuality.
And remember, the wine industry is constantly changing, so your brand needs to be flexible and adaptable.
Roll with the punches, but always stay true to your core values.
I love that. Embrace change, but don't lose sight of who you are.
And never lose that passion.
Yeah, passion is contagious.
When you combine passion with smart branding, strategic pricing, and authentic storytelling, you create something truly special.
It's not just about selling wine anymore. It's about creating an experience, a community.
A legacy.
This deep dive has been incredible. We've uncovered so many gems about wine branding.
Me too. I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to apply these insights to their own lives, their businesses, or even just their personal enjoyment of wine.
Absolutely. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a little something to think about.
Okay, I like where this is going.
We've talked a lot about storytelling and building a narrative for your brand, but I'm curious, what story does your wine cellar tell?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's like a personal reflection of our individual tastes and experiences.
Yeah, like if your collection of wines could talk, what tales would they spin? What would they say about you?
It's a fun way to think about the personal side of wine branding.
Welcome back to our deep dive. I hope you had a minute to consider what stories those bottles in your cellar might tell.
Yeah, it's fun to think about. Each bottle holds a little piece of history, doesn't it? From the vineyard to the winery to eventually your glass.
Right. Like when you pop that cork, you're releasing a bit of that story.
Like a time capsule.
And, as we've seen throughout this deep dive, connecting to that story, to that emotion, is so crucial for any wine brand that really wants to stand out.
It's about making a connection that goes beyond just the taste of the wine itself.
Exactly. And we've explored some really fascinating case studies so far, right?
Oh, yeah. The Prisoner Wine Company, how they completely flipped the script on traditional wine branding. And Opus One with their mastery of, exclusivity.
Each brand has its own unique approach, but they all get that it's about connecting with consumers on a deeper level.
Yeah, it's about more than just selling a product. It's about selling a feeling, an experience.
Right. Okay, so I want to shift gears a bit now and talk about you, our listener.
Okay, I'm listening.
Because this deep dive isn't just about passively taking in information. It's about using these insights, applying them to your own life, your own business.
Putting it into practice.
Exactly. So let's get practical. If you were to create your own wine brand, what would it be like? What story would it tell?
Ooh, I like this. It's like a little thought experiment.
Right. So imagine you're designing your dream wine label. What comes to mind?
Okay, First, I think about imagery. Is it modern and sleek or more classic?
Yeah. Would it be minimalist with like bold fonts and geometric shapes? Or would it have those traditional ornate details?
Ooh, and what about the colors? Would it be a rich, deep red or a crisp, refreshing white?
And don't forget about the name. It's got to be memorable, something that captures the essence of your brand.
Right. The name can tell a story all on its own, like Sunset Vineyard or Midnight Harvest.
Wild Coast.
Oh, I like that one. Evokes a sense of adventure.
Exactly. The possibilities are endless. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's about creating something that feels true to you and resonates with the people you're trying to reach.
It's all about expressing your unique vision. And then, of course, there's the whole pricing puzzle.
Right. We've learned that price isn't just about covering costs. It's a powerful tool that can shape how people perceive your wine.
Yeah, it's crazy how much a price tag can influence our perception of quality.
So where would you position your wine in the market? Would you go for that sweet spot of $45 to $70 that we talked about earlier? Or would you aim for a higher price point?
It depends on who I'm trying to attract, right? Like, am I going for everyday drinkers or people looking for something more special?
Exactly. And remember that halo effect. Sometimes a higher price can actually boost sales because it makes the wine seem more desirable.
Totally. It's about striking that balance between perceived value and affordability. It's tricky.
Okay, so you've got your brand, you've got your pricing figured out. Now, how do you get the word out? How do you launch your wine?
Ooh, the launch is the exciting part. Would I go all in on social media? Partner with influencers like 14 Hands did?
Yeah, maybe a big launch party with all the top wine critics.
Yeah.
Or maybe you go for a more grassroots approach, focus on local wine shops and restaurants.
So many options. I'd probably try a mix of everything, to be honest.
And whatever you do, remember that authenticity is key. People can tell if you're not genuine.
Be true to yourself and your brand, and let that passion shine through. It's the most powerful marketing tool you have.
Well said. This has been such a great conversation. We've explored so much about wine branding.
Yeah, it's fascinating how much strategy and psychology go into it. It's not just about grapes and fermentation.
Right. It's a whole art and science. And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to apply these insights to their own lives and their own relationship with wine.
Whether you're a wine enthusiast, a budding entrepreneur, or just curious about the world of wine, there's always something new to learn.
Absolutely. So as you enjoy your next glass of wine, I encourage you to think about the story behind it. Think about the journey it took to get to your glass.
From the vineyard to the winery to your table, it's all connected.
And if you're looking for even more insights on wine branding and marketing, make sure to check out David Vogel's full article on LinkedIn. It's a great read.
Yeah, definitely worth a look.
Well, that's it for our deep dive this week. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, cheers.
Cheers.